So continuing on with the DLC weapons, today we have quite literally a welder. One very powerful broken welder. It's just so amazing. Look, take a look at the tremendous amounts of damage that you can deal with just basic attacks with this thing, as you can see showcased right now. So the thing with the welder is that it's just basically a flamethrower, and we already have something like that on the base game with the Flamberge Legion arm. What's the problem with the Flamberge Legion arm? That it doesn't stagger enemies. Like, that's the major problem. Like, you can be spraying fire on top of the enemies, on the face of the enemy, they would not get staggered, meaning that they would fight back, and you would always be getting like a punch in the face. The welder, the beautiful thing about it is that, as you can see right here, it has lots, and I mean lots, of stagger potential. You're always going to be staggering the hell out of everything. It also breaks stances. It's not as effective as with breaking the enemy stances with bosses and things like that, but it still is going to break enemy stances, which is very, very powerful. But then again, the real deal with this thing would be sustained DPS damage, that when it comes to exploration, it basically trivializes the game because it staggers the hell out of everything. It's just so powerful like that. So you have sustained DPS that is also going to be inflicting a status ailment on top of the enemies, so whenever they are on fire and you're dealing the continuous fire damage to them, that is going to furthermore enhance the damage and DPS potential that you're going to be doing. So this is a very, very, very powerful weapon. Cool thing about everything as well is that it's very early on DLC. So in this case scenario, I'm going to show you how to get it. We're going to go to the Isolator Underground facility, and I'm going to be guiding you through it, but I'm also going to be showing you a little bit about the potential and capabilities that this thing has. We're going to be fighting a couple of elite enemies on the way there, and you will see how fast are we going to be dealing with them. Then again, the cool thing about this is that it's sustained damage on DPS that is always going to be staggering enemies, meaning that it's not going to allow them to attack, so that you can continue your spray of fire, as you can see right in here, and you don't really care about them retaliating or not, because at the end of the day they are staggered. So that's the cool thing about this weapon. You can still get your ass handed to you if you're not careful, like you saw me doing right in there. I almost got killed, but no problem, there's no problem at all with it. Then we're going to go down in here, and then we're going to get rid of this guy. There's a couple of enemies right in here that I do advise for you to take care of them, because to continue on, we actually need to go through that ladder that you can see right there. But there's also a somewhat of an elite enemy. That's very annoying. There's also the falling enemies, those enemies that you see on the cages of that. They are going to fall and they are going to complicate things. By all means, you can kill them if you want to, but my advice is that you draw the aggro for that guy, wait for the enemy animation to finish, and then run towards the ladder. This is going to be more than enough time for you to climb the ladder and continue your path. There's going to be one ugly little guy right in here. Cool thing about this weapon that I also wanted to showcase to you is that it also has a backstab. So not only do you have like the rain of fire right in here, you can also backstab enemies, which is very, very cool. The one thing that I wanted to show you is down there. Down there, it's like a very, very annoying elite enemy. One of the most annoying elite enemies that you have on the base game, because they are always so aggressive and they are always in your face. So we're going to be dealing with him really fairly easily, as you will be able to see right in here, because we're going to stagger the hell out of him, and we're not going to allow him to attack him, because every time that he wants to attack, he's staggered and he's dead. Just simple as that. Like, how broken is this? And you're going to find that right in here. Now you will notice that I'm not actually using the welder base of the weapon. I'm using something different. We'll talk about that once we built about the weapon crafting. The best stats, the best handles, and a couple of tricks that we have with this weapon to make it that much more powerful and be able to deal the damage that I'm dealing in this video. But first and foremost, let's actually talk about the actual weapon baseline when it comes to the moveset. So the basic attack, as you are very well aware by now, it's this continuing spray of fire that is going to be dealing lots of damage. It also inflicts those ailments that is going to continue dealing damage, improving your DPS, overall DPS. The cool thing about this weapon, what I like about this weapon, is like the running attacks, because you can actually set everything. So you run and then you start attacking. It's going to plunge you towards the enemy, but you can also move. So if you feel that something is getting close to you, you can move while you are spraying. You can go backwards, and the range is just amazing. It can also be done with like dodging attacks, so you can start the animation. It just plunges you forward to the enemy, which is very, very good to close the distance and immediately start attacking. And remember, you're going to be staggering enemies, so this is very, very, very cool. Then you have the heavy attacks that are not going to change that much. Even if you dodge, the dodge heavy attacks are not going to change anything. If you charge, is going to be doing this double thrust. It's nice, I suppose. The only main difference that is going to change with the heavy attack is going to be here, but my advice is that you never, ever, ever, ever use heavy attacks with this weapon. The reason why we actually alter the upper portion of the weapon is because the basic Fable art that you have right in here, it barely deals any damage. So as you were able to see, it was like 1900 damage. However, what you actually do want to be, and it's going to use 3 Fable slots, what you actually want to be using all throughout your playthrough with this weapon is going to be empowering your weapon, because this is going to buff your fire damage, but also it's going to buff your stagger potential. So your DPS is always going to be potentialized, and while you are dealing damage, you're also getting your Fable slots back. So this is a buff that you should always have active at all times, especially if you have one very specific talisman that we'll talk about in a little while. Now, what can I do to improve my weapon? Well, this is a weapon that basically has a B scaling in advanced, meaning that this is for an advanced build, but also if you give an advanced crank or handle, this is going to furthermore enhance your scaling all the way to A. That's the first thing that you want to do. The second thing that you want to do is that there's actually some very, very cool weapon combinations that you can see that in here. So this is the actual base weapon as it is. If we actually change that to the puppet, the black steel kata blade, you will see that we're going to gain 20 points into fire attack, which is, it might not sound that like much, but it is going to be, because at the end of the day, most of the time we're going to be dealing sustained fire damage that is going to be adding that to the overall DPS of the weapon. So that is why I was using this thing. However, not only that, you can also do like a crazy combination with the electric coil stick head. This is going to give you access to basically a build with all of the elements. It's only going to reduce your, well, it's actually quite a lot. It's going to reduce your damage by 31 points. But one cool thing about this is that the electric coil is one of the most powerful weapons in the game, because it inflicts the electric status ailment, and once the enemy is electrified, it's very easy for you to stagger them. So essentially you still sustain the electric portion, as you can see right in there, but once you have electrified the enemy, you can also then furthermore deal more damage with the actual fire portion, and you will see that he's still electrified. So when the enemy is electrified, I believe that they receive more damage, but it's also easier for you to stagger them. So here you have a very, very fun weapon to use in combination, because this is now where you actually do want to be using your heavy attacks that are going to be thrusting heavy attacks. They deal decent amount of damage, but they also going to electrify the enemy, allowing you to have those extra windows of opportunity for the actual damage when they're staggered, and then once they're staggered, you can continue the attack with the fire portion of the weapon that is going to stagger them all the more easily right in there. Not only that, but it's also going to change the actual Fable art towards increasing the actual electric portion of the weapon that you can stack to have the actual buff of the base weapon like this. The character stats are pretty straightforward. Remember that we have a soft cap and advance on 40. That's ideally what you want to be hitting first, and then you're going to focus onto vitality, vigor, and capacity. Capacity is going to be especially important for people that are playing a New Game Plus, because remember that in New Game Plus you receive more damage, and you have to be using the heavier armor that you get from New Game Plus. A lot of the people that are receiving that much more damage is because they're using basic game gear and not upgrading. Like once you reach the New Game Plus, capacity is your main stat, because you're going to be using heavy armor, like very, very heavy armor that you can only get on New Game Plus. And then Vitality, I believe, is the sweet spot on 30 because that's the maximum amount of healing that you can get. A safe spot for healing when it comes to your actual pulse charges. If you go higher, then you have to be using 2 instead of 1 to heal, so it's a little bit harder to manage, and then Vigor in 30, of course. Then we have the amulets right in here. I like to have the Patience Amulet to increase my stamina recovery speed, the Carrier's Amulet, because a lot of the stuff that we're carrying, it's actually pretty heavy. Then the Storyteller's Amulet, this is something that you can get on the DLC, increase the Fable charge amount when attacking. Remember that we always want to have our weapon buffed. And then we have the Morvis Ambition Amulet. This is the amulet that you get by defeating the first boss of the DLC. It's going to increase the damage, but it's also going to increase the stamina consumption. This is very useful because we're always, more often than not, going to be using the basic attacks, and this is what enhances the basic attacks. Finally, the Legion arms that you want to be using are either going to be Fulminis or Pandemonium. And you're not going to be using Fulminis if you're using that crazy combination that I just showed you, but when it comes to the Pandemonium right in here, if you use this, you're going to have all of the 3 types of elements available to you at all times. You have the degradation element, the poison element, you have the electricity, and then you also have fire. So yeah, this is like a very, very, very cool and fun build to use. With this setup right in here, you already have the actual degradation from Pandemonium that you're going to have right in there, so you can add the degradation to the enemies, and then you can also have the actual electric portion of everything right in here, and also the fire portion of your weapon that you have right in there. And just as easily as that, you can just be dealing tremendous amounts of damage because you have all of the elements right in that. But just as a brief recap, if you want to be dealing the most possible DPS, highest DPS when it comes to fire damage, you're fighting something that is weak to fire. This is specifically good to use against humans or husks and things like that. However, in the DLC, there's little to no things that are going to be resistant to fire damage. Actually, most of the enemies that you have in the DLC are weak to fire damage. There's a couple of elite puppets that you have in the DLC that are actually resistant to fire damage, but for those cases you can change the weapon handle into the electric one, so you have lots of versatility with this build right in here. And then again, with the risk of being redundant, if you're going to be using the fire damage, then you're going to be using the Black Kata blade, and if you're going to be dealing the all elemental, and then you're going to be using the Pandemonium and things like that, and so on and so forth, and you're going to be using the electric coil. Anyways, if you like the content, you like it, it's super appreciated. And also, you that you're gorgeous and beautiful person, you're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.